I'd love to start by understanding from your perspective why you feel gaining business confidence and business acumen is so valuable for our discipline.
Yeah, it's strange that it's something that we have to encourage people to become actively aware of and even pay attention to. I think I started my career in very much the same way that most people started their career in this sort of field, in that I was very much in love with the craft and the making aspect of the role, and completely drowned in that kind of moment of learning all the techniques and hurriedly kind of rushing from one new tool or methodology to another, and then much like sort of most people who kind of do that for a while, I started to become frustrated with the environment in which I was designing and how difficult it was for the designs that I was creating and sort of so lovingly crafting, and these sort of these hurried kind of ways. I was sort of frustrated at the impact of them or lack of impact of them, and my ability to affect that. And what I had not sort of understood, and I think this sort of is an aspect that I think is maybe it's missing in design education, but it's certainly a kind of common theme across all the designers that I've worked with and known over the years. But understanding the reality of that Venn diagram, that that sort of awful kind of Venn diagram where you have the users on one side and the business on the other, and the overlap is the kind of sweet spot, is the theory of it. It's a terrible. I mean, I have nothing against Venn diagrams, but it's a terrible diagram for lots of reasons. But it does sort of highlight that there is the user's needs and there's the business needs, and I don't think designers, for whatever reason, inherently want to get as close to the business needs as they do the user's needs. You can throw a stone in Shoreditch and you'll find someone who will like champion the needs of the user and what's right for the user, and you're very hard pushed to find a product designer who will do the same for a business.
Yeah. What's your take on why there is still this real lack of focus, lack of emphasis on the business aspect?
Yeah, I think there's a few reasons. One, I think, is that there may still be some roots of design from art.
Right.
In my view, design is the sort of continuum between art, which is, an expression for the sake of an expression, and then there's engineering, which is, the mechanical solving of a problem. And I think design inhabits the space between those things. And I think in art, commerce is it's such a grubby topic in art that I think there's probably a bit of hangover from that.
Right.
But I think most, and I think partly because it's never part of education. It's never part of how people are sort of born into the industry. They, you sort of come in looking at lots of outputs without ever understanding the problem that it's solving. You get kind of obsessed with the actual outputs rather than the outcomes in those instances. But I think, most of all, I think it comes from the fact that the topic is rarely ever presented in a colourful, engaging way. Change management and business strategy and profit and loss and the sort of economics that revolve around business and those kinds of things. That they come with their own kind of. No designer is going to put one of those books on their shelf as a pride of place, are they? They're pretty dry things, and they're written in pretty dry ways, and it's so far from the language and the kind of things that we're used to in the design industry and the way we talk about things and the way we approach things that I think it's off-putting.
Right.
And I think that's a real shame. And I've certainly kind of waded through more than my fair share of kind of pretty dry material to understand what it is. And I think that gap between this is my knowledge as a designer, or content designer, product designer, brand designer, whatever type of designer you want to label yourself as, there's a gap between that and those skills and that understanding of what's necessary versus other parts of the business like the sales team and the supports team and maybe even the product management team. I don't think they add up in the same way.